Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to start a new project. Going to do something totally different that I've never done before, and that is a horizontal concealed carry for the lower back. So it'll be horizontal this way instead of the traditional this way, vertical. And I'm going to do something I've never done with adding some color. So I'm going to put some American flag, the Celtic flag on there. And yeah, you guessed it, it's going to be for a Celtic firearm. And it is the new Celtic P17, which is a 22 semi-auto. It's super lightweight, so it'll fit real nice back in the small of your back here, and it'll be horizontal as so. So that's what my next project is going to be. Again, I've never done a horizontal like this, and I've never done the actual acrylic painting on the leather either, so that's going to add two things to this project that I've never done. So I'm excited about it. I'm ready to get going, so come on in and let's get started. Alright, so I've got a piece of 9 to 10 ounce veg tan leather here. In order to do my painting that I want to try to do, I'm going to have to do a little bit of carving and stamping too, so it'll give it that 3D effect. It won't just be painted on there only. So I'm going to need two pieces of this rectangle, and I made it rounded corner. One piece will be on the front, one piece will be on the back. Both sides will have the finished side out, and basically that's where my belt's going to go through. So they'll stitch this way, long way on each end, then you can slide your belt through there, those two pieces. Then this piece will stitch on top of the front piece, and that's what's going to hold the pistol. So I'm interested in seeing how this is going to turn out. So I want to go ahead and start by taking these, and I want to make sure that I get these correct as far as positioning as I do this. So I'm just gonna trace my pattern, and I made these patterns ahead of time just by sitting down at my workbench and pulling out the pistol and going through and measuring everything out. This I don't think is going to be as critical as an actual vertical type pistol. I don't know yet. I don't think I want to wet form this just because of the painted flag on there. So I want it to be more of a sleeve type holster, and then I'll probably put a retaining strap on it. So we'll see how that goes. And then I want to make sure that I do this right, because I need to take a look and see how this is going to go in there exactly, so that I get this oriented right. Sometimes I'll sit down. I'm ambidextrous, so my left and my right brain don't work together all the time. seems like. So I'll sit down and make a pattern and find out that I made it the opposite of what I needed it. So when this, I'm right-handed as far as shooting, so I'll want to draw it right-handed from behind. So if this is the front, I'll want it to be like this. So that'll make this upside down, so I'll need to flip the flag, which is not a problem. I can do that. I've already taken the flag and made my pattern on some wax paper and a Sharpie so that I can use that to go over my leather when I get ready. So when I cut this leather out, I want to make sure that I cut it like this, upside down to us, just because when I made my pattern, I did it the opposite way for left-handed. And again, that's just a thing that I do a lot. It's not on purpose. It's just because I do some things left-handed, I do some things right-handed, and as you can see right now, I'm drawing with my left hand, and then I'll draw the gun with my right hand. So it just gets confusing to me sometimes. I mean, if you're predominantly right-handed or predominantly left-handed, I don't think that would be a problem. But sometimes it gets a little confusing for me. So let's go ahead and cut this out. And we're going to see if this piece is plenty long enough because of the way it's going to be made. I may need to make it wider, but we'll see. But let's go ahead and cut these pieces out. And I do have a brand new razor knife blade. In this knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut these long sides first in a nice straight line. Not going very fast. I want to make sure I follow my pattern line. Set those scrap pieces aside. And again, I may have to redo this piece and lengthen it. But I don't know because I've never done one of these before, so I'm going to try it. A shout out to Kentucky Leather and Hides in Sonora, Kentucky, where I got this leather. You get a chance, make sure you go check out their website. They have a lot of cool leather and exotic hides. And I'll try to remember to put their link in the description. If not, just Google Kentucky Leather and Hides. It'll pop right up. And then I'll cut around these corners. And some of these are real subtle, especially on this top piece. The sleeve for the holster doesn't have a lot of radius except for this one right here. I'll move those out of the way. So there's that piece, which is the top piece. And I'll cut the ends of the front and the back. And then once I cut the straight edge of the front and the back, I'll go ahead and do the corners on it. Keep those little pieces out of the way. And I'll grab the last one here. And then once I get these corners wrapped up, I want to make sure that I double check that top piece and make sure that it's going to work. If it's not, I want to fix that now before I go any further, because that's the one that has all the flag artwork on it, so I don't want to put a lot of time and effort into it and then find out it's not going to be big enough. Or, you know, if I had used this pattern before, I'd know if it was going to work for sure. But again, I've never done this before. This is a brand new project for me, so I'm going to have to make sure I've got everything right before I move to my next step. So there's preliminarily, that's easy for me to say, my three pieces. And let me get all these little cut pieces out of my way so they don't end up all over the place and on my work. Alright, so there's my three pieces. There's my front, my back, my belt's going to go through here, and then here's the sleeve part for the actual holster. And again, this, I'm going to double check it. It may need to be quite a bit longer. I don't know. So we're going to look at it right now and see what we've got, and then see if it needs to be any longer. And it's all based off the thickness of the gun. Normally I would do that on a regular holster. I'd add a certain amount, and it looks like this is going to be a little short, as I kind of expected that, but I wasn't positive. Let me get another piece of leather, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add an inch on each side, top. In this case, it's actually a side, but in this picture where I've got it, it's the top and the bottom. And I'm going to add an inch, and I can always cut more off. I should have done that originally when I made my pattern. I'm not really sure. I think I was kind of in a hurry. Sometimes I get excited when I get an idea and get in too big of a hurry. So there's the piece that's going to be quite a bit longer. And then I'll have to put my rounded edges on there. And I've been using I keep random things that have rounded corners on, different radiuses that I like to use. I don't like to keep everything square cornered. I kind of like putting some radiuses so it's not pointed. And that's a personal preference also. You do whatever you'd like. Make sure those are out of the way so I don't cut them. And I'll go ahead and cut this piece out. You can see it's quite a bit bigger than the first one. And again, it just depends. It's gonna, if you made this for a different pistol, different size, or different caliber, depending on how thick it is, it's going to change. This top piece will change from gun to gun. So let me cut this straight piece off here. And I can do the corners, radiuses. Sometimes I'll cut these out as I'm cutting out the pattern, but a lot of times I find it so much easier and quicker to do them this way and just cut the radiuses afterwards and just make multiple cuts around the edge like that. Alright, again, I'm going to get rid of these pieces out of my way. And let's see what we have now. If this was the top, have plenty of space to go around. And I'll probably just go ahead and put these stitches in this piece and the other two and stitch it all together at one time. So that looks like that's going to give me plenty. So I may need to cut a little bit of that off. Let me see here. I got to get it just perfect. On that edge. Flatten it out as best as I can. And it looks like I could take about a ½ inch off of this smaller end over here. So I put an inch extra on each end. I only needed an inch and a half. So that's truly a custom fit. Again, it'll depend on what you're making this for as to the size of this top piece. The other two pieces are pretty simple. You just make an outline so that you know it's going to fit on there, and you got space all the way around. And then once I round these corners off, hopefully this will be the last time I got to do that, and then I'll dry fit it one more time before I do anything else and put any more steps or time into it here. Again, I'll get that out of the way. I like to keep those out of my way. And we'll dry fit it here one more time before I move on. That's going to be perfect. So I've got my three pieces. I've got my piece that's going to have the flag on it, and we're going to do it the opposite way. So all I have to do is just turn my artwork. Instead of like this, I'll just turn it 180 to put the flag on there. And then I'll kind of have to get an idea when I start the flag. I'll dry fit it one more time, kind of get an idea where that's going to go, so that the flag is actually on the flattest part of the holster. So I'll take my beveler and I'm just going to bevel the outside of the top piece, because that will stitch to the other two pieces. So there's that one. I'll do the top of the front piece. Again, if you keep these bevelers nice and polished, they cut real nice and smooth. And then I'll do the finish side of this so that when I put these together, the two flat sides will match. They won't be beveled. So it'll make a nice cleaner fit. It's been several videos ago, probably maybe even a year ago, I had a subscriber that commented and said, hey, when you have two pieces going together like that, why do you bevel the front and the back? Why don't you just bevel the fronts or the finish side, and then that'll give you a more finished look on the edge? And I thought that was an excellent idea, so I've been doing that a lot lately. So whoever that was, if you're still watching, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So there's my three pieces. that are ready for the next step. And then we'll go ahead and I'll burnish this one, and we can go ahead and take a look. I'm going to look right now and see on this. I'm going to get this. It's unloaded. There's nothing in it. Take the clip out. It's empty. I was getting that barrel safety thing out of there. So I'm putting this down here so I can get a good idea where this flag needs to go. So I can lay my artwork on there. And I'll just take, since I'm going to be doing some stamping and everything on this, I'm just going to put little reference marks in all four corners here, so that I know where I'm going to lay that out when it's flat. So now I've got my reference for my artwork. I'll put this safety plug back in here. I can go ahead and set these aside and do my casing for this piece and get my stamping ready. Sorry to keep reaching in front of you. But while this piece is casing, I can get my granite piece up here. I've got this piece cased. I got to get my piece of granite. I like to work on top of that anytime I'm doing any artwork or stamping or carving. So I'll put my piece up there. Try to find my reference marks here. So there's the reference marks at the top there. There's my reference mark there. So what I'll do is I'll keep that. I don't want to put tape on my leather because it will, you pull that tape off of there and it leaves residue and it just messes up the finish. Or at least that's what I've found. So I like to keep my artwork nice and snug on top of that, and then just tape my artwork down so it doesn't move. And then I hold on to my leather as I'm putting my artwork in. So I can go through, and this stylus has got a pretty good point on it. So if I really push on this wax paper, I'll go right through it. So what I'm going to do is I normally take a good thick box tape, and this is Scotch shipping tape, and I'll take it and put it right over my artwork on the wax paper. And in this case, it's going to take 2 pieces. I'll just overlap it just a little bit. And then what that does is that gives a lot more strength, so I can't push through my wax paper as I'm taking my stylus and outlining or tracing my artwork onto my leather. So this process, depending on how intricate your artwork is, it can be a little tedious. Again, a lot of it has to do with what artwork you're using, how detailed it is. I've done some, especially on guitar straps, that is very detailed. And then I've done some that's just real simple line art that really doesn't take a whole lot of detail. But it's kind of like once you get a rhythm going, and that's another thing I like about this tape over the top of that wax paper, is that it really lets this stylus glide over the top of it. So it makes it really easy. And what's going to be neat about this, I think, is that the two of the corners, the top right and the bottom left, actually just barely go off the edge. And I think it's going to look neat. It's going to make it look like it's meant to be that way. So I've got my outline, I've got my letters outlined. Now all I have to do is outline the stripes. And you don't have to push really hard on this, because all you're wanting to do is just transfer that image from your artwork over to your cased leather. And once you've cased it, just moistening it lightly. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to get that image transferred into that leather. And then once it's transferred, you're good. Even if you let your leather start drying, it's going to be in there. It's not going to come out. So I'm on my last stripe here. So I can go ahead and take my tape off, and I'm going to leave one piece of tape on there and pull this back and make sure I didn't miss anything, so that I can lay it right back down without moving anything. And it looks like it's pretty good. So there's the artwork transferred to the leather. That's how we're gonna get that stamped in there so that I can actually paint it. So the first thing I want to do is let me get my beveling knife here. And my strop. I want to polish that up. This is my older one. Let me get my newer one here. And this knife's more polished already. So I'll polish that blade up real good. You can see how nice and shiny that beveled edge is. And then I'll just go ahead and freehand this onto my lines. And I'll show you the difference here. If you could see the difference that bevel knife makes. That swivel knife, it's got that bevel blade on it. It cuts it, the top layer of the leather, and then kind of pushes each side out. So you get that beveled and that 3D look to it. Polish it up a little bit more. Then I'll go ahead and do my lines on the stripes. And if your lines on your artwork transfer aren't perfectly straight, because obviously I was doing it freehand, when you use this bevel knife, this swivel knife, I'll show you here in a second, it'll straighten those lines out for you. Then I'll do the ends here, being careful not to go past the stripe itself, obviously. So there's the stripes. You can see they're more 3D now, and I haven't even done any stamping yet. And the same thing is true with the lettering. You freehanded it, but as you do the swivel knife cuts, it'll straighten those up for you. And depending, how you want to do your colors, this is going to be red, white, and blue. Do you want your background flattened out, or do you want the letters flattened out? That's something you kind of have to keep in mind as you're getting ready to do this. I don't know, that's just again, that's one of those personal preferences. You can take a look at it and decide, hey, do I want my background that's going to be white, do I want it flat? And then my colors raised, which would be the blue letters and the red stripes. It's kind of up to you how you'd want to do it, or whatever artwork you're putting on there. You would have to make that choice if you're trying to do the 3D type look to it. And these aren't huge letters, so it would be kind of difficult to get your punches or your stamps that you would use. It'd be kind of difficult to get those in there because the letters aren't real super thick. So that's another thing you need to think about. So there's all of my cutting that's done. Now the next thing I need to do is decide on that stamping. How do I want to do that? Do I want to leave my letters raised and my background lowered, or do I want to lower my letters and keep the background up? And I think I'll try to do the background up and lower my letters, and do the red stripes and the blue letters lowered. And for that, it's going to take a pretty small background tool. And I don't know if you could see how tiny that is, but that is a tiny little backgrounding tool. It's real narrow. So I can fit that in my letters. So I'll do one here and I'll show you what it looks like. And you'll notice I'm not getting in any hurry. So there's my K, and I've used that backgrounding tool and did the letter, so that's sunk in now. So the white part would be the raised or the background, and then my blue paint would go inside of that lowered leather. That should help with my painting also, as far as keeping it sharp and clean. So what I'll have to do is go through now and do each letter and each stripe that's going to be red with this backgrounding tool. And what I'll do is I'll do the letters first here. And then I'll show you what that looks like. Once you get started and you get the hang of it, you can kind of keep going and moving your stamp tool as you're tapping on your mallet, and obviously that's going to help it move much quicker. But you notice I'm not hitting it really hard either. I'm just keeping it up off of my leather just a hair, and as I hit it, it's going down, hitting the leather, and then it pops right back up to where I had it held away from the leather. And then you can sharpen up the points. This little tool has a point on it on one end, so you can go back and kind of clean that up, clean those letters up as you want to or need to. So you could clean those up however you want. You can go back and do some little touch up to it if you want to inside. So there's the letters. The next I need to do the stripes. I haven't done these yet either, so let's see how they work out. Just kind of go back and forth as I go down each stripe, and again, it's just like the letters. If you want to go back and clean up those edges or those corners, you can. Just want to make sure that it's nice and even all the way down. And it does have, this one does have a little pattern to it. It's not smooth, so it's got little tiny dimples to it, which again, that's, if you want to use a smooth one, you can. I think this adds a little bit to it myself, especially if you're going to paint it. again, if you see something you want to touch up a little bit on the corners or whatever, just go back and touch it up. Like here's a spot right here. Do a little touch up to it. That just makes it that much nicer. And again, as you do it, you get more comfortable with it. It's kind of the quicker you go. If you get tired, make sure you stop, rest a second, because it seems like, at least in my experience, if I get tired or feels like the blood's running out of my hand, one of my hands, especially the one I'm using my mallet with, that's when it seems like I make a mistake. So if I feel like I'm getting a little tired, I'll just stop, rest a few minutes, and then I'll go back to it. Now, I've kind of done this pretty quickly and did a wholesale job, but I'll go back and clean up all those corners and those points and make them look really nice. But now I'm ready to go ahead and dye this, and then I'll wait for that to dry. Then I'll come back and do the acrylic paint, and I'll show you in the next video how I do that. So thanks for coming along, watching and sharing this time with me. We're getting there. It's going to be a pretty cool looking holster, I think, when I'm done. Like I said, I've never done this. It's all new to me. So I like doing new things. It makes it exciting. So thanks for coming along, sharing it with me. Please come back for part 2 next week, and we'll be moving on to the acrylic on this and try to start wrapping it up. I'm trying not to go any more than 2 parts on videos. So the bigger the project, the harder that is to do, but that's my goal. So please, as I always say, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.